Hey, what's up, everyone?
Hey everyone.
Welcome to our fourth episode. We're super stoked to be joined by Jeffrey. Just a heads up, this episode was actually pre-recorded. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this.
Hello everyone, my name is Jeffrey Barr. I am 20 years old, currently going to Mount SAC to major in graphic design, and I'm working on my own video game called The Night Watch, which is a RPG mixed with rhythm game elements. So yeah.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, that's awesome, Jeff.
So Jeffrey, what inspired you to create this game, The Night Watch?
So originally it wasn't actually intended to be a game. It started out as like an idea for a concept album that I wanted to do. That was basically just like, all right, what if 80s aesthetic meant like dystopian future? So what spurred me to do that was a band called the Proto Men, which basically like took the lore of the Mega Man games and kind of turned them on their heads into this more realistic take. And I was like, wow, that's a really interesting way to interpret the story. Well, first of all, that showed me like music could be more than just like cool melodies and stuff. It could also tell a story. And then from there, I found other bands like The Deer Hunter, which is basically like a life story, essentially. Not a real one, but realistic fiction about this boy who loses his mother at a very young age, joins the First World War, and becomes mayor of a town after a whole bunch of crazy stuff happens. So then from there, I found another band called Coed in Cambria, which is a bit more abstract in the way it tells its story. But essentially, like, once I found out how personally intense concept albums could be, that was, like, my main draw of, like, whoa, I want to do something like this. Like, I want to tell a really interesting story through music. So from there, like, I started drawing up ideas. I started writing out the basic outline of the story and a couple of the songs. And I was kind of taking my own time to figure out how to piece it together in a really interesting way and how to actually get it to people. So that's kind of like what stuff. I have the story, I have the characters, but no one's ever going to see those or really understand those because they're under so many layers of just music that I feel like it would be a waste to have my idea solely produced as an album. Like, obviously I still want the album as part of the larger story because it is something so personal and special to me, but I wanted it to be implemented into something larger that could fully get across my idea without compromising the original story. So the way I kind of have it set up is like the album tells the story that I originally planned like 5 years ago. That's not very simple, but simple enough to be able to fit into an album without feeling cumbersome. But also the games kind of expand upon those events in different ways that allow me to be artistically creative while also maintaining the same interest in the story, either for those who just listen to the album and are like, I want a new experience, or those who are like, wow, I like the simple story, but I'm also interested in what this deeper story has to offer too. So that's kind of like where I didn't want to compromise, is in like, I didn't want to rewrite the first three albums or the outline of the first three albums to make them fit more with the games, because I feel like the simplicity of what I originally had is something very special. Like, it's something I want to keep consistent, but also like I said, I wanted to expand upon that more. Like, how could I make these ideas even more complex, even more interesting? Because when you go from an album to a game, it's like, all right, now you have to give these characters motive, you have to give them dialogue, how do they speak, how do they interact with the other people in their lives? Like, when it's singing, it's like you're just getting out someone's personal emotions, which in the case of The Night Watch are my personal emotions projected onto these characters. But now it's like, okay, now it's deeper, now it's bigger. I have to actually think about how each of these characters approach this situation to the point where it gets to the events in the album. So that's kind of like where I'm at right now, is in writing a lot of the story, like digging through the pieces, seeing how it all fits together in this way instead of just like, okay, I have the album. Because more than anything, the album is kind of like a marker for where the main beats of the story go. But the games are also like, all right, how do I get there and how do I make that interesting as well? And how could I even change it up too?
Right. That's super interesting, man. So with that in mind, was there any inspiration behind the characters in this game that you created?
So a lot of my characters are inspired by people who I either knew in real life or inspired me in some significant way. And basically, I take what I learned with them and reflect on it. Like, okay, what have I learned from this person? How have I grown as a person? How have I changed? So as I'm like looking on reality, I then take that and project it through a lens of fiction onto these characters. So without the fictional aspect, and if I just told the stories as they were, a lot of it would just be like boring, stupid high school drama. But when I'm able to do this and say, all right, how can I retranslate these events into something more significant? How can I make them more impactful to a general audience? Then that's when I'm able to say, all right, I have something here. This is pretty interesting. Like, I have a lot to utilize here. And at the core, obviously, my main drive is to utilize these characters in an interesting way. Because without interesting characters, the story could be super good, but it won't seem that way if the characters are, like, awful, boring, flat, have no more depth than simple caricatures. And that, of course, as someone who really deeply cares about the story, is something that I want to avoid at all costs. So in the case of Violet, she was like my first child. Like, she is the one that I adore. That's why she's my favorite color. But in terms of the way I wanted to implement her into this world, she's the character who I relate to most. So a lot of her actions are built upon really good and noble intentions. But unfortunately, due to the state of the world in the Night Watch, a lot of the things that she does end up resulting in hurting the people who she loves the most. Obviously, no major spoilers here, but due to the things that she does, it puts her in a position to realize, like, okay, even though I had these good intentions, I still ended up hurting the ones who I love. So that forces her into a position of very deep self-reflection, where she goes, all right, like, how are people viewing me? How do people view what I've done? Is my work even worth it? Have I impacted the world in a meaningful and positive way? Obviously, those are answers that she doesn't have on her own, but even though it feels like she's alone, there's still this small voice that comes alongside her to comfort her, to say, no, you're not alone, and yes, you're reaping the consequences for what you did, but I still love you anyway. So that's something that I wanted to take away in developing the Night Watch. Like, okay, like, if I'm truly being real about this story, my intention is to be as real as I can through this, like, lens of fiction. That's where it's like, all right, guess I better continue to look at this and continue to analyze how these events have impacted my life, while also telling something that I hope can help other people get through their problems, get through their struggles, because a lot of the emotions that I've attached to these characters are inspired by things that I've gone through, and even though they don't go through them in the same way, I hope other people are able to pick up on that, like, man, okay, like, I should probably look at these areas of my life too. Like, how can I become better from this situation? How can I move forward with this in a healthy way? So that's where a lot of the inspirations for my characters have come from. I wanted to write them as realistic people, and realistic people have flaws. So that's where I kind of had to look at everything objectively. Like, all right, where did I go wrong? Where did this person go wrong? And sometimes it's not even where they went wrong. It's like, all right, how did I feel when they did this? Like, was I happy? Was I okay with that? Like, those are things that I had to think about and truly, like, analyze and understand. Okay, there are some good elements here, and that's where I was able to take my own convictions and say, all right, I want this character to be like this.
So Jeff, in this game, were there any partnerships throughout the process?
Not necessarily partnering with them, but more like I'm employing good friends. So obviously I'm the director, I'm the coder, I'm the writer, I'm the main artist, or not the main artist, the main concept artist. So every idea that I have is like my own, and then I hand them to my other artists and say, all right, translate these into the style of the game. So I have my sprite artist, Ghostosaurus Meh, who does his own work on Twitter. I have my lead artist, which is Brittle Bree. I think she goes by Brittle B _ now, who is like the main character artist. She's not my concept artist though. And then I have many concept artists who have been like, all right, I think you could help me translate this aspect, and then I'll give it to my main artist. And then my final artist is Mika V, who's on Instagram. She does really top tier art, and she's like my ace in the hole. So basically no one knows about her, really, but she's doing very important background work for me to try and bring this story together in the way that I want to tell it, specifically for this game.
So as you all have been working on this game, is there a set release date in the near future?
Well, that depends until I get the demo out. From when I get the demo out, then it will be easier to estimate. Not because I'll have a frame of reference, but more so because once I see the demo completed in there, most of my groundwork is complete. And then from there, I have to figure out how to secure funding, or like I have to go out into the work field and try and get some income that way for it. Because a lot of my income will probably go to finalizing the songs with an actual band. So more than just like doing everything I'm already doing with the art and the writing, it's like the music is what's going to cost me the most money. So I can imagine the game being finished about a year after the album, because I'll at least have scratch takes and demos to work with, and the album should take no more than a year and a half to produce. So hopefully from there I'll be able to finish the game in about 2 years. But it still might take a year or two until I get to that point. So before 2024 is my goal. I'm thinking around 2023.
Wow, that's pretty cool, Jeff. So did you pursue graphic designing, like, influence the creation of this game?
Well, one thing is when I started, I was very, I don't want to say stubborn, but I was very set on like, all right, I'm the only one who can make this vision come to life the way I want it. So I want to do every single thing by myself. So the first thing I wanted to do was like, I didn't necessarily want to do like graphic design. That's just kind of like where I was led. So when I was creating that board game, that was inspired by some of the characters from the Night Watch and then some of Jared's characters as well. Like, I had to create a logo for the fake board game company that I was a part of. So that was where I took my sketch of the Jackrabbit and like put it as the logo of that fake company. So from there, I kind of just went like, all right, let me give this guy some actual like thought into the design of how this would work as a logo. And it didn't really end up becoming a logo because it's too complex, but that ended up becoming the emblem for the Nightwatch band, which obviously doesn't exist yet, but the plan is when they do exist is that'll be the emblem of the band as well as the Nightwatch logo that I have made up too.
So good, bro. Thank you for being on the show, man. Honestly, one last question for you. What are the important aspects behind a good team? In such of your case, you overseeing this project and you having partners create, the designs, and in the case of the characters and music wise, your album. What are the aspects that create a good team?
Well, the most important thing is to make sure you have good friends who obviously will support you, but who also know what they're doing. So obviously that's a little bit harder when you're new and you don't know who knows what they're doing or not. But as you go, you learn that there are always people who will know more about you in your field, and you have to kind of figure out, all right, like if I want to get this done, who do I have to delegate this work to? Like, should I do it to someone who's, well, specifically for music, do I do it for someone who's a sound engineer and have them produce this music all digitally? Or do I hire a band? Or do I work with local musicians? Or does it matter if I'm friends with them, or do I just want them for their work? So there are things like that you have to think about. And honestly, like, well, as the project director, it's like, of course I want to be friends with everyone who I work with, because that creates a good working relationship. But there comes a point where you also have to realize, like, okay, not everyone's necessarily in it to be friends. Some people are just here for the gig, here to do it for a paycheck. And as long as they're doing good work, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But at the same time, it's like, is that important to you? Like, how long are you willing to wait before you hire someone? Because it takes a while to get to know someone before you hire them, because then you learn their work ethic, like how are they dealing with their life situations, like what does their life even look like? Can they handle the work that I'm about to give them? Will they even accept the work I'm about to give them? And there are a lot of things that you have to take into consideration before you finally go, hey, all right, this is the person that I want. This is their job that I'm giving them. They will get it done by this time, etc. But of course, like as Christians, be gracious to those who you work with. And especially because a lot of the people who you work with will probably not be Christians, that's even more on you to be like, all right, you got to show them grace, you got to show them love, bless them. If they're having a hard time in their life, encourage them. You can't always necessarily encourage someone with scripture, because unfortunately not everyone's as receptive to that. But just saying, I'm here to you, or I'm here for you, I'm here to listen to what you have to say. Things like that go a really long way. And then that eventually could open up doors to be like, all right, like, why is this person so nice to me? So why I want to ask them, like, why are they like this? And then as it's on us, then it becomes our responsibility to maintain our witness.